so you agree with it in the sense that he was mocking this person's sexual orientation and appearance.
I agree with the assertion that YouTube's terms of service as written were violated on the basis that he was singling out an individual, and the characteristics that that individual was being targeted with or spoken about were sexual orientation in terms that the terms of service say is not allowed.
Welcome to Eat the Narrative, the place where mainstream myths get shredded and the truth hits harder than a press release ever could. In today's episode, David Pakman takes Joe Rogan to task in a fiery debate over social media moderation. Joe argued that tech platforms are deliberately targeting conservatives, painting censorship as a tool of the left and warning that free expression is being threatened. But David came prepared, pointing out that the real problem isn't political bias, it's the spread of misinformation. What some call censorship is actually an effort to maintain usable, safe platforms. If you're tired of the worn-out narrative that conservatives are being silenced, this discussion might shift your perspective. Pakman didn't just disagree with Joe, he dismantled the notion that free speech is being stifled. Instead, he exposed how the term is often weaponized to defend falsehoods rather than encourage honest discussion. So let's dive in and see how David Pakman outmaneuvers Joe Rogan in a heated debate.
Is that different, in your opinion, than someone singling something out for what you believe is their mental incompetency?
Well, the mental incompetent. Do you mean that they're ignorant, or that they're mentally ill or cognitively limited?
Cognitively limited, mocking their ability to think, mocking their intelligence, mocking their decisions, mocking the way they talk, and then encouraging other people to do the same thing. And then that person gets harassed based on their intelligence, based on their performance on particular YouTube videos and conversations. And there's active harassers. There's people that do that. Is there a difference between, say, what Sam Cedar does to Dave Rubin?
What does Sam do to Dave Rubin?
He has...
I don't know that I've seen that video.
Dozens of videos. Don't say that video. He has dozens of videos where he's just dunking on Dave Rubin.
So, I have some as well. I believe that they are substantive. That's my view, is that my videos about Dave Rubin are substantive. I don't really watch any left-wing stuff because I want to try to isolate myself enough to make sure that what I'm saying are my ideas
unique, yeah.
and that I'm not taking them. So Sam's a friend of mine.
Sounds like a comic.
And that's interesting. Yeah,
comics do that.
I don't know, but if there's some specific examples, we could comment about them. But I think that to your first question, there is a difference between going after someone for sexual orientation, right, than going after them for the fact that they say things that are wrong or don't know stuff, until you're making fun of someone who has an actual handicap of some kind of, cognitive limitation that would be a disability of some kind. Then you are mocking someone for a disability.
But the resulting effect of the harassment, see, this is what I was getting at before with Crowder. Like, what Crowder said was one thing, but one of the things that Carlos Mesa was discussing was what the people that had watched Crowder, what they were doing, how they were going after him. As if, see, that is a real discussion. Like, what happens when you say something about someone and then your fans agree and then they take action? Which
I didn't see that in the Steven Crowder decision that the reaction was part of YouTube's evaluation. Now, I may just have missed that, but I didn't see YouTube say that part of the calculation had to do with what other people were doing.
I don't think they did say that, and I don't think they would. But I think Carlos Mesa did say that. It was one of the things that he was talking about, this endless assault that he's experienced.
Well, he's right to call it deplorable. I think we would agree with that. I think your question is more about whether YouTube...
Who's responsible for it, right?
Who's responsible for it, yeah.
These anonymous people that can just lash out at someone and insult them out of nowhere.
Ultimately, they are responsible. Those people are responsible. Those people are responsible.
I agree.
True to his form, Joe leaned into the free speech argument, attempting to equate attacks on someone's sexuality with criticisms of bad opinions or flawed logic. But Pakman consistently brought the focus back. Social platforms have community standards for a reason. In the case of Steven Crowder targeting Carlos Mesa, these standards were clearly violated. David made an important clarification, one that Rogan seemed to overlook. There's a huge difference between challenging someone's viewpoints and going after their identity. When a person's sexual orientation is used to incite hostility or ridicule, it crosses into targeted abuse. That kind of behavior isn't protected expression, it's harassment. And most major platforms outline that distinction clearly in their policies. Joe tried to blur that line, suggesting that even valid criticism could lead to mass harassment. But David countered with a key point. There's a fundamental difference between criticizing beliefs and directing a mob towards someone because of who they are. One fuels debate, the other fuels hate. It's just that simple.
However, so there's this term stochastic terrorism. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
No, I'm not.
Stochastic terrorism is the idea that if you have a big enough audience, and you go and every day you're talking about someone should really do something about a particular politician. You're doing it every day. You're doing it every day. At a certain point, given a large enough audience and enough repetition of that, and the fact that there's like a distribution of people's emotional states, cognitive capacity, etc., it is statistically probable that someone from that audience is going to go and try to do something about whoever it is that you're targeting. That individual who has the show and is hammering on this person day after day after day, they're not going to be legally responsible for that person from their audience who went and did something. There's no way that you're going to hold them legally responsible under the current legal system that we have. But you could argue that it is irresponsible in some way not to understand that your consequences have actions. Of course, the person who goes and does the violent act is the primary person who is responsible.
Right, but as long as you're not calling out for that act, how do we make this distinction that someone is encouraging that act or someone is at least inspiring that act?
They're judgment calls. I mean, listen, I can go on my show and I can speak in vague terminology or specific terminology. You know, imagine that there's a local business that I don't like. I could go on my show and I could say, this business did this, and I need everybody in my audience to show up there and to make it impossible to get in and patronize that business. That's very clearly on one side of the gray area. I could instead say, you know, there's a business, and I could say the type of business, but I not name it. If it's a small enough town, people would know exactly what business I'm talking about. And I really don't like the way I was treated there. And if only there was some way that someone could do something about it. The effect could be the exact same one.
Right.
I don't know how you measure when it's on one side or the other.
It's like, you could somehow or another remove your you could somehow or another make it so that it's, I'm agreeing with you. Yeah. You could remove your responsibility for the action in some sort of way.
Coming from a libertarian lens, Joe posed the question of how to draw that boundary. A fair concern. But Pakman introduced a concept more people need to be aware of: stochastic terrorism. This is the idea that repeated, emotionally loaded rhetoric about someone can eventually incite real-world violence, even without a direct call to action. This happens all the time. Examples of this are chilling. Dr. George Tiller, an abortion provider, was assassinated after years of vilification in the media. Or consider the January 6th attack. Trump never explicitly ordered the crowd to breach the Capitol, but his persistent claims of election fraud undeniably influenced the outcome. David emphasized that in today's media landscape, influence carries weight. And when you have a massive following, your words can spark action, even if you never say those exact words. As Pakman put it, if you imply something vague about a small town business and people can guess who you're referring to, the consequences can be serious, even without telling them what to do. What he's advocating for isn't silencing people, it's accountability. Having a platform comes with power, and pretending otherwise is irresponsible. Unfortunately, many right-wing commentators want the perks of virality without the responsibility.
This just got interesting. I was trying to find a tweet from Mazza about him sending or asking people to flag Crowder's videos.
Did you get the one where he asked people to go assault people with milkshakes and humiliate them at every turn?
YouTube tweeted an hour ago, 12:30, that to clarify, this is responding to Carlos Mazza. To clarify, in order to restate monetization on his channel, he will need to remove the link to his T-shirts.
Oh, so it's the Figs T-shirt.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, that's all he has to do?
He specifically asked about that, and then they responded, that's all he has to do.
Wow.
That's pretty easy.
That's pretty straightforward.
It's pretty straightforward. Yeah, this shirt's stupid. But, you know, he's a comedian. I mean, that's what Crowder's doing. And in his doing the thing about Meza, he's mocking him for his appearance. But Carlos Meza specifically encouraged people to throw milkshakes at people that disagree with him and to harass them publicly and humiliate them.
So one thing doesn't justify the other.
No, it doesn't. But that is more egregious.
How far
asking people to assault people and asking people to physically humiliate people in person, in my opinion, is more egregious. I don't agree with mocking his physical appearance. Well, his physical appearance is, that's just what it is, you know, but the sexual orientation aspect of it is like, yeah, I get it. It's not nice.
How far do you think
necessary.
this is just a comedian thing goes? Because I hear that a lot in just excusing things that are said.
Well, he's trying to do comedy, right? So he's trying to make fun.
Is he?
Yeah.
Well, hold on. But comedy and making fun of someone are two different things. Like, I don't do comedy, but I will sometimes make fun of things people say.
Right, but he's doing it to be funny. He's making fun of things specifically to be funny. And sometimes, you know, when you do that, you go too far. You cross lines.
I genuinely did not realize that Crowder does a comedy show.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
His
show is a comedy show.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of it is funny. He does some funny shit. He really does. Whether you agree with him or disagree with him, he's done some hilarious bits.
I'm reacting in real time because I had no idea.
He has this bit he does about this French socialist. He puts on a wig and pretends to be this different person. He's pretended to be a transgender person. He's done a bunch of these infiltration videos where he'll go into these ridiculous organizations and ask them questions. But it's very much a comedy show.
Dressing up like a trans person's funny?
It is if you're funny at it, if you're good. I mean, Mrs. Doubtfire, wasn't that funny? And that's what he was doing. He was dressing up as a woman.
He was dressing up as a woman.
Right.
He was dressing up as a woman. And that's a great movie. I agree with you there.
Pakman drove home a critical truth. There's a line between critiquing someone's politics and mocking their identity. Joking about someone's sexual orientation, looks, or gender identity isn't edgy, it's lazy. Especially when it comes from someone with a massive platform, knowing full well that their audience might take it and run with it. There's responsibility there. Then there was the part where Joe defended Crowder by saying his show is comedy, like Saturday Night Live. That's a huge stretch. Sure, Crowder includes sketches, but when whole episodes are dedicated to mocking marginalized communities and staging undercover stunts based on racist or transphobic stereotypes, it's clear that there's something more going on. It's not just humor, it's a comedy show pushing a political message, and that distinction matters. The debate between David Pakman and Joe Rogan centered on the boundaries of free speech and the role of content moderation. Joe warned about suppressed voices, while David stressed that moderation isn't about censorship, it's about reducing harm. Ultimately, Pakman made the way more convincing case. Free expression is essential, but rules are necessary to prevent abuse. That's a wrap from Eat the Narrative, where truth isn't polished, it's weaponized. If you guys enjoyed the content, please drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Peace.